Time to wake up. Time to go to school. Who feels like that, huh? Who feels like that? I sure don't. I'm excited to be here. All right, so the Black Pearl, Chapter 2, as we read about in Chapter 1, we have main character named Ramon, and he tells us, let me tell you about the Monte Diablo. But before I can tell you about the Monte Diablo, let me tell you about the Pearl from Heaven. So, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Chapter 2 right now. So let's swing on over here. And here we go. Please follow along with me by reading the words as I read. It seems now as if it were a long time ago, but it was only last summer, on a hot day in August, that I sat at the window and watched our pearlers make ready to sail. My father is Blas Salazar, and for many years he was the most famous dealer in pearls anywhere on the Vermilion Sea. His name was known in Guaymas, Mazatlan, Guadalajara, even as far away as the city of Mexico, for the fine pearls he wrested from the sea. Last July, on my birthday, he made me a partner in his business. It was a grand fiesta, and people came from the town and from miles around to drink chocolate and eat pig roasted in a deep pit. The biggest part was at the beginning of the feast when my father brought forth a sign, which he had hidden until that moment, and nailed it over the door of the office. The sign said in tall gilt letters, Salazar and Son. And under this legend in small letters was the word pearls. My father beamed with pride. Ramon, he said, pointing at the sign, look, now there are two Salazars to deal in pearls. Now they sell twice as many pearls as before, and finer ones. They sell pearls in all the cities of the world, these Salazars. I looked at the sign and blinked my eyes, felt like shouting. But at that moment, my father said something that made me feel like a boy and not like a partner in the house of Salazar. Ramon, he said, pull down your cuffs. I am not scrawny, yet I am small for my age and thin. My wrists are very thin, and my father was ashamed of them. Being so big himself, he did not like to think that his son was puny, nor that anyone else thought so. Afterward, my father took me into the office and showed me how to open the huge iron safe. He showed me the trays lined with black velvet and filled with pearls of all shapes and colors and sizes. Tomorrow, he said, I will begin the education. First, I will teach you how to use the scales with accuracy, for the weight of the pearls is very important. Then I will explain the many shapes, which is also very important. Last of all, I will show you how to hold up a pearl to the light and tell just by looking at it whether it is of the excellent quality or good quality or only poor quality. Then, by the time you are as old as I am, you will be the best pearl dealer in all of our country, and you can teach your son everything I have taught you. That was the happiest day of my life. That day 4 months ago. And yet, it was not all happy. Beside the embarrassment when my father had said, Ramon, pull down your cuffs, there was also a big fear that kept worrying me. As my father explained everything I had to learn, I feared that not soon would I have the chance to sail with the fleet. For many years I had dreamed of the time when I would be old enough to go. When you are 16, my father had said, you can sail with me, and I will teach you how to dive in the deep water. Many times he had said this, and I had counted the weeks until I would be 16. But now that I was 16 at last, I could not learn to dive for pearls until I learned many other things. There's a small window in our office, It is only a slit in the stone and set high in the wall, and it looks more like an opening in a jail than a window. It was built that way so that not the smallest thief could squeeze through. Yet it gives a fine view of the beach and the Bay of La Paz. Furthermore, the men who work there on the beach the men who work there on the beach opening the shells cannot tell whether they are being watched or not, which sometimes is a good thing. On this morning, as I sat at my desk, I could see the 5 blue boats of our fleet riding at anchor. Water casks and coils of rope and supplies lay on the beach, ready to be carried aboard. My father strode back and forth, urging the men to hurry, for he wanted to catch the outgoing tide. The tide would turn in less than 3 hours, but in that time I hoped to examine all of the pearls that lay on my desk. There were still 9 of them to look at and weigh and duly note in the ledger, so quickly I set to work. Under the desk, wrapped in a neat bundle, were my singlet, cotton pants, and a long, sharp blade my grandfather had once given me with which to fend off sharks. I was ready to sail with the fleet if my father would give his consent, and I had made up my mind to ask him, whatever happened. The largest of the pearls was as big as the end of my thumb, but flat in shape, and with several dimples that could not be peeled away. I placed it on the scales and found that it weighed just over 35 grains. In my head, I changed the grains into carats and set down on a fresh page of the ledger, 1 Baroque button, dull, weight 8.3 carats. The second pearl was smooth and pear-shaped. I held it to the light and saw that it gave off a soft amber glow, whichever way it was turned. I set it on the scales, and then wrote down in the ledger, 1 pair, amber, weight 3.3 carats. I had put the 7th pearl on the scales and was carefully setting the small copper weights to make them come to a proper balance when I heard my father's steps outside the office. My hand shook at the sound and one of the weights slipped from my fingers. A moment later, the heavy iron door swung open. My father was a tall man with skin turned a deep bronze color from the glare of the sea. He was very strong. Once I saw him take 2 men who were fighting and grasp them by the back of their necks and lift them off the ground and bump their heads together. He came across the room to where I sat at the desk on my high stool and glanced at the ledger. "You work with much rapidity," he said. 6 pearls weighed and valued since I left this morning?" He wiped his hands on the tail of his shirt and took a pearl from the tray. "For this one," he said, "what is your notation?" "Round, fair, weight 3.5 carats," I answered. He rolled the pearl around in his palm of his hand and then held it to the light. "You call this one only fair?" he asked. "It is a gem for a king." "For a poor king," I said. After 4 months of working with my father, I had learned to speak my mind. If you hold it closer to the light, you will see that it has a flaw, a muddy streak, about midway through. He turned the pearl in his hand. "With a little care, the flaw can be peeled away," he said. "That, sir, I doubt." My father smiled and placed the pearl back in the tray. "I doubt it also," he said, and gave me a heavy pat on the back. "You are learning fast, Ramon. Soon you will know more than I do." I took a long breath. This was not a beginning for the request I wanted to make. It was not good at all. Yet I must speak now, before my father left. In less than an hour the tide would turn and the fleet sail from the harbor. "Sir," I began, "for a long time you have promised me that when I was 16 I could go out with you and learn how to dive for pearls. I would like to go today." My father did not reply. He strode to the slit in the wall and peered out. From a shelf he took a spyglass and held it to one eye. He then put the spyglass down and cupped his hands and shouted through the slit. "You, Ovando, leaning against the cask, send word to Martin, who leans against the tiller of the Santa Teresa, that there is much work to do and little time in which to do it." My father waited, watching through the slit, until his message was sent forward to Ovando. "If you go with the fleet," he said, "then all the male members of the Salazar family will be on the sea at once. What happens if a storm comes up and drowns the both of us? I will tell you, it is the end of Salazar and Son. It is the end of everything I've worked for." "The sea is calm, sir," I answered. "These words prove you are a true landsman. The sea is calm today, but what of tomorrow? Tomorrow it may stand on end under the lash of a chubasco. It is still a week or two before the big wind comes. What of sharks? What of the devilfish that can wring your neck as if it were the neck of a chicken? And the giant mantas by the dozens, all of them the size of one of our boats, and twice as heavy. Tell me, what do you do with these?" "I have the knife that grandfather gave me." "Ha! Ha! Ha!" My father laughed, and the sound bounded through the room like a roar of a bull. "Is it a very sharp knife?" he asked scornfully. "Yes, sir." "Then with much luck you might cut off one of the 8 arms of the devilfish. Just before the other 7 wrap around you and squeeze out your tongue and your life." I took another breath and brought forth my best argument. "If you allow me to go, sir, I shall stay on deck while the others dive. I shall be the one who pulls up the basket and minds the ropes." I watched my father's face and saw that it had begun to soften. "I can take the place of Goletta," I said quickly, to follow up the advantage I had gained. "There is an apology to make, sir. At noon, Goletta's wife came to say that her husband is sick and cannot sail. I forgot to tell you." My father walked to the iron door and opened it. He looked at the sky and at the glossy leaves of the laurel trees that hung quiet on their branches. He closed the door and put the tray of pearls in the safe and turned the bolt. "Come," he said. Quickly I picked up my bundle, and in silence we went to the street and up the winding path to the church high on the bluff. My father always came here before the fleet sailed to ask the protection of the Madonna against the sea's dangers. And when the fleet came home, the first thing he did was to hurry here and offer thanks for its safe return. The church was deserted, but we found Father Gallardo and aroused him from his afternoon siesta. While he stood beside the Virgin and held his arms outstretched in benediction, we knelt and bowed our heads. "We ask your mercy for these men," Father Gallardo said. "Give them good winds, good tides. Guard them against the hazards of the deep waters. Make their journey fruitful in all ways, and bring them back in good health." I glanced up at the Madonna as Father Gallardo finished his benediction. He stood calmly in her niche, fashioned of seashells, dressed all in white velvet. She had the face of a child, but she was really a young woman, neither Indian nor Spanish, with broad Indian cheeks of a golden brown and eyes of a woman of Castile, large and shaped like almonds. I always loved her, yet never so much as I did at this moment. I was still gazing at her when my father gave me a pinch on the shoulder and motioned me to follow. Here's a picture of the church. We went outside and stood for a moment under the laurel trees. "I note the bundle under your arm," my father said. "So you must have told your mother when you left this morning." "I said nothing to her, but I shall go now to tell her that I am leaving." "No, I will send someone with a message. If you go, it will take time. We are already late. Besides, there will be tears and lamentations, which are poor heralds for a voyage. He summoned a boy who was watching us from a distance and gave him a message to take to my mother. Then we went down the hill toward the beach. The sun was setting, yet I could clearly see the fine blue boats of our fleet riding at anchor. In the fading light they looked silver, like live silverfish floating there. Beyond them, the harbor stretched away for leagues between the headlands to the island of Espiritu Santo and the open sea. I wanted to ask my father many things as we went down the hill, but my head was buzzing with excitement, and I could think of nothing to say. All right, so let's talk about chapter 2. We are introduced to Blas Salazar, Ramon's father, and he makes this sign that says Salazar and Son. And this is something special because now Ramon is old enough to join with his father in the family business of pearlers. All right, it says that Ramon is scrawny. Actually, he says he's not scrawny. Scrawny means weak. And as you can see here in this silly picture, there's this guy who's trying to be strong, but he's just not that strong. So it says that he's not scrawny, which means he's not weak. He's just small. Okay. Let's see if I can find the exact sentence here. Oops, that's the wrong chapter. I am not scrawny, yet I am small for my age and thin. Okay, so Ramon is telling us that he's kind of small, but he's not a weakling. All right, velvet. We are told about the velvet here. He showed me the trays lined with black velvet. Velvet is it's a material, like clothing, but it's super smooth, so soft. Oh, it feels so nice. Rub it on your face, it feels so soft. Okay, and velvet, it's that deep black color, and we often use it for jewelry. If you ever buy a ring, you'll often find it come in a velvet box like that. All right, 4 months ago. So what Ramon is doing is he is saying, he's telling us the story, and the timeline gets a little confusing. So he starts here, okay, and let me tell you the story of the manta ray and the pearl and the Sevillano, and then it kind of goes forward a little bit, and then it kind of jumps back and goes forward. So that was the happiest day in my life, that day 4 months ago. So his birthday was 4 months ago. And so for 4 months now, he has been working for his father, and now he wants to dive for pearls. So let's see if this is going to work. See if we can see this guy dive for pearls. So you have to get the clam.
Oh my god. That is a pearl oyster. I don't know. Look at that. I actually got it. I can't believe I got it.
Getting the oyster is hard enough, but finding a pearl is very rare. Oysters grow pearls naturally as a defense mechanism. If something gets caught inside their shell and irritates them, they protect themselves by covering it. And pearls occur in fewer than 1 in 10,000 wild oysters.
Okay, a moment of truth. Do we have a pearl? Ready? Look at that. Oh my god, we do have a pearl. Kind of. There is so. Look at oh my god, we do. Look at that. Can you see that there? I'm just going to take my glove off and look if I should have it. Can you hold it for me? Wow, look at that. That's unbelievable. Look at that. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a pearl. How about that? I'm genuinely shocked.
All right, so that's what Ramon wants to do. Ramon wants to dive down and get the shells and see if there's pearls in them. So this is part of the building of the Ramon and Salazar's building, and it says the slit is a small opening. So it would be something like this. That slit is that small, thin opening. Okay, Ramon also tells us about the weighing and measuring of the pearls, and it's called carat. So say it with me, carat. But it's not this kind of carat. It's just a term that we use when we are measuring gems and pearls. And so when you buy a diamond someday, when you want to get engaged and get married, boys, you'll go to the jewelry store and you'll hear some guy telling you, oh, well, this has got, 3 carats and that's, 5 carats and this one's half a carat. And so anyway, it's how you measure size of those kind of special jewels. And so Ramon is measuring them. But he has a request. That means he's going to ask his dad something. It's to ask something. Hey, can I ask you something? Yes, sure, go ahead. So a request. I'm going to ask you a question. And he's a little nervous. I really, really, really want to go, but my dad might say no. I've been working for him for 4 months. I should get to go. I should be able to go, right? Hey, Dad? Dad? Can I go with you, please? And his dad goes, well, what about a chubasco? What if there's a storm on the ocean? What if the winds and the rain? And then his dad goes, what about a devilfish? Devilfish has 8 legs and it'll attack you. Well, we know that the word devilfish as an octopus. An octopus. Devilfish is how it's described in the story. We're going to see this word a bunch in this story. All right. The church is on a bluff, and a bluff here is kind of the cliff above the ocean. And so the church looks out over the ocean. School's over. All right. And then they go to the church and they're praying and they talk about the Madonna and her niche. Okay? Or niche, depending on how you pronounce it. I will probably pronounce it lots of different ways. Not Madonna like the singer, but especially for people in the Catholic faith, the Madonna is Mary, who is the mother of Jesus. So this would be baby Jesus right here. And this is Mary, Jesus' mother. And she is in her niche right here. Okay. So if you go into a Catholic church, you will often see very similar kinds of pictures or statues. And so Ramon and his father and the priest are all here in the church and they pray. All right. The pastor was having his siesta. I wish we had siesta. Siesta is a Spanish word for nap. So if you speak Spanish, you probably recognize the word siesta. If you don't speak Spanish, this is where you're going to have to learn a Spanish word because we use this word in English and we say things like, oh, I'm going to take my siesta. Because we're Southern California, because we are so close to Mexico, some of those Spanish words have trickled into our language. And we just kind of, in English, we just steal words all the time. So siesta is a word that we should all know, and it means nap, after lunch nap. All right, so Ramon asked, Dad, can I come dive with you? And his dad goes, what if there's a storm? What if there's an octopus? And he goes, look, I've got my knife. I'll fight it off. There's no storm today. The weather looks good. Please, Dad, can I please go? And his dad goes, okay. Yes! All right. So Ramon gets to go with his father on the boat to dive for pearls. Let's do a quick summary of chapters 1 and 2. Ramon Salazar works with his father. They sell pearls. Ramon is going to tell us the story of how he fought the Monte Diablo, a huge sea monster. Ramon really wants to go with his father and learn how to dive for pearls. His father says, okay, you can come. Ramon says he is not scrawny, but he is small. I think it sounds like it might be difficult to dive and fight the Monte Diablo, especially if he is this small boy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. All right, we will continue with chapter 3 later on. Have a good day, ladies and gents.